You're listening to 87.1 Caroline Radio, KCGN Bakersfield, your home for all your variety hits. And of course, Blind Advocate Radio. This is Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people where we talk about issues in the blindness community on my brand new microphone. I just opened it 1 minute ago, so we should have a wonderful experience tonight with Chris Williams. He happens to be one of the co-founders of a new group on Facebook for blind people called Life Without Cite. Chris, welcome to Aaron's Opinion. How's it going?
Not bad. Thank you very much for having me, Aaron. Definitely appreciate it.
So one of the things that was, you're always welcome here. One of the things that was never really made clear to me, I suppose on Facebook things only get it can only get so clear, I guess.
Right, right.
But one of the things that was kind of a mystery to me is how quickly this particular group, Life Without Cite, sprung up. Well, why don't we just start at the beginning? So how did it get set up in the first place? Go right from there.
Okay, no problem. So me and a guy named John, I actually met John. He was actually in part of the group. I've been a part of a couple of different groups, and he was in a group that just kind of like made it kind of fun to be in, because before it was like, obviously, you know, when you're going through sight loss and you're going through eye issues, there's tons of seasons in it, you know, like 1 minute you can be fine with it, the next minute you're kind of sad in it, and it just kind of cycles back. So he brought like a lot of positive energy to the group, like a little different and unorthodox, I'll say. So
sure, definitely.
Yeah,
That's fine.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, it was definitely like I don't want to say a breath of fresh air, but it's definitely something great and different. So a lot of people took to it because it was a change from the typical, you know, oh, I'm having this happen, like not to be rude, because I've been there before, but the woe is me, depressing stuff, it was a lot different. Like watching someone live their life that was blind, and they were a little more upbeat about things. So it was definitely like good. So whatever reasons, we don't have to talk about it, but he was excavated out of the group. And there was another person that actually put up a post about, you know, why would he be taken out, this and that. So there's a lot of questions held by a lot of people, like, why was he taken out? You know, he brought this and that. So he touched a lot of people, not including just other people, but me, you know, just the difference about it. So I kind of messaged him because, you know, when I saw his live video in that group, I messaged him and reached out to him because I was curious about his story. And so we talked a little bit. And then when he was taken out of the group, I kind of asked him why. And he's like, yeah, you know, there's so many different speculations on why. I'm not sure. But, you know, I was like, well, you know, if you decide to do something else and you thought about starting a group, then, you know, let me know. And so we ended up.
And, you know, and actually, and I will say that actually I secretly do know the real reason. It's not for this podcast, but I do know what the real reason is. So, but, you know, I think that it shows that we live in a time where people, some, you know, certain, you know, not John, but perhaps certain other people are it seems to be hypersensitive to certain things. My opinion about this in general, just tip of the iceberg, is people need at times to, number one, get anything off your chest off of it, but at the same time, if 100% of us in the entire world filtered what we say less than 1% of the time, 100% of the time, then we would have, you know, a lot fewer of these types of misunderstandings. So, all right, well, but no matter. Anyway, so then you guys created Life Without Cite. What's that?
Yeah, so what we did, I got in touch with John, and there was another admin who's losing her vision as well, and a really good friend of mine that I actually met through the group that I met John through, and we've been in touch for a while. She lives in Australia, and we all got together and we started talking about it, and that was the idea that he kind of had. And so I've been a part of a couple of different Facebook groups, like I've said before, but I mean, for me, it's like, it's not, I mean, it's real life, which I appreciate it a lot, but there's also like a lot more real life with blindness and with visual impairment, other than just, you know, oh, so what does your NFB do for you? Like, how can I get this? Like, where's like kind of the real talking and like, hey, how do you deal with real life? Like, this? How do you deal with, cooking? How do you deal with doing this? So there's a lot of stuff that is real life when it comes to blindness and visual impairment that I feel in the groups just isn't talked about, or it's kind of shot down, so we decided that we wanted to be definitely like that. We obviously didn't want anyone in the group underage. We definitely wanted anyone in the group, unlike the other groups, we wanted it to be only visually impaired to blind. We didn't want there to be any sighted people in the group, because we don't feel, well, my big thing was I kind of got it involved, and I was like, well, I don't feel like that really helps. Like, it's great that, people, support blindness, and, they definitely want to, help someone else they know, but this isn't for that. This is actually for us. So this is for people that are completely visually impaired, obviously to the point where you can't drive is the visual impairment that I wanted to go with, because I myself am visually impaired, not blind. I have a little bit of sight in my left, but it's like 20/200 with no peripheral in my left. And then the right eye is hand motion out of the corner only. So I wanted to be something like that, to where everyone really understood where we were coming from. Because a lot of the other groups, there's a lot of different opinions about things when it comes to sight, which is kind of sad that, some of the blind community is like divided. And, there's a difference between, I believe in legally blind, where prescription can help you, and extremely visually impaired. So we want to be about real life support for people that need
Exact,
it.
exactly. And someone else that I was interviewing a few weeks or months ago, whenever it was, how much, if any, of Aaron's opinion have you gone through and listened to? Have you listened to any of my content? It's fine if you have not.
No, I actually have not, sir. To be honest with you, I've
No,
been
no
really
worry, no
yeah, I've
worries, no
really
worries.
focused. Yeah, really focused on doing some stuff I have going on. I'll talk to you about that later.
Cool, cool. Well, no matter. The reason I bring it up is because someone I was interviewing a few weeks ago was saying how, yeah, they feel that there's this huge divide in the blindness community between the people who are, recently blind, who have been born blind, who were born blind,
Oh
and
yeah,
they
yeah.
they feel that that's starting to become not really right, because certain groups of blind people are saying these silly things that they shouldn't be saying. And I explained to him, I said, look, there are always going to be these people in these groups who just simply are blind people who don't really understand, what it's like, to be sighted. We can't understand what it would be like to be sighted. And some of these things I told him, this other person, I said, some of these types of inconsiderate messages and posts that you're seeing, you just have to kind of, in a sense, kind of block it out a little bit, sometimes, and not, and try to understand that everybody who's blind has a totally different perspective on things. And
Exactly, and that's that.
everybody, and the other issue of all of this is that everybody else thinks that everybody else is right. Everybody thinks that, oh, my opinion's the right one, everything that I say is right. Everybody thinks that, when in fact,
No,
no, what everybody is saying are their opinions. But yes, go ahead.
exactly. You're 100% right when it comes to that, and that's just what I've had to learn myself, because I'm new to this. Like, I've had 12 different surgeries in the last since 2017, and after my fourth surgery, which was my first in my left eye, I never returned to work in January 2018. I was diagnosed in April 2017. So I was sighted for 38 years of my life, all the way up until, recently, to where it got like bad. So this is new for me. So the best way I can tell people is that, what, like, I can't understand. Like, I couldn't understand what it would be like for someone that was born blind. I mean, that's just something that, you're used to. It's like, you'd never know any other way. Just like I would never, like someone else would never know how it was to be sighted. So my best analogy to do that is for me to say, and this is my own opinion, is just that it's like, imagine being born into money. Imagine being born rich. That's all you know. And then have it all taken away. And that's how I felt about it. So, like, people take for granted the stuff that's not really that they don't even know they really need and cherish and love, like eyesight. And then all of a sudden it can be gone one day and all of a sudden you're poor. So you don't understand what it's like. You've been that way. And, vice versa, like someone that's been blind their whole life, like wouldn't, really understand, like, but if they got their sight, that, I mean, that's a whole nother story for another day. But I just try to tell everyone to, definitely respect everyone else, because in the end, no matter what, the one thing we all have in common is blindness or eye issues. But at the same time, the world is filled with like billions of people. That's a billion different, like, characteristics and a bunch of different, people. So we're all going to be people regardless of our disability, and everyone's going to have their different opinions and feel how they feel.
Exactly. Yeah, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. I cannot imagine what it's like to be sighted, because I never was. I was born blind with glaucoma.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll never say that I pretend to understand that challenge of having to lose vision when you're, 38 years old. That all I can say is that must be hard, because I can't imagine how hard that can be. So it must be hard to lose your vision as an adult, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and basically what's your background about that a little bit? How what brought that on? If you don't mind me asking, how did you start to lose your vision a few years ago?
Absolutely not. I definitely don't mind answering. Actually, I have a whole thing I've actually been doing. Someone just urged me to do it. They're like, "Your story is just so amazing." I'm like, "There's so many stories like mine, though." They're like, "Nah, but
Hmm.
the way you carry it is amazing. You've always been this person." So they urged me to do it. So I actually started a YouTube channel, and I actually have my whole entire walk on there and what I'm doing as well. So I won't touch on that right now, but I got diagnosed with diabetic retinopathy. I actually went to get eyeglasses because, like, right when I noticed that, like, you know, a couple times, like maybe a couple times, like a week for about a month, I would have blurred vision, like to where I look at my phone and I couldn't see it. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? So I figured I needed glasses because I always had astigmatism. So I was like, okay, well, I'll go get some glasses. Went to my local lens crafters, and no offense against lens crafters, but I went there and they were like, wow, your eyes are horrible. You're going to be blind soon. I'm like, excuse me? And they're like, yeah, you're going to be blind soon. And I'm like, okay, like you need to see a specialist. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, what the hell does lens crafters know? They're a glasses store. Like, they're not specialists. Okay. So I went and saw a specialist 2 weeks later. This was the beginning of April. And he's like, yeah, it's advanced, this is what it is. It's really bad. I'm like, okay, when you go through, like, essentially finding out like someone could be dying, you kind of lose it. So it's almost like the same thing when it came to my eyes. I'm like, wow, so I broke down, really hard to deal with. And then like, well, what's the plan? They're like, well, we feel like the best course of action would be to start you on eye injections because it could, stop this. And, and I didn't even know. So I thought about it. I called my sister in the room and asked her what she thought. It's like, well, it's the best place, that is showing. It's like really, like, it's highly rated, so I would trust what they say. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, what are the side effects? Like, well, the chances that we'll slow it down are like good, but there is that chance, that we could speed it up. And I'm like, well, if it's going to speed it up, I prefer not to do it. I'd rather just let my sight like ride out and go. And he's like, no, I think this is the best chance. So started me on eye injections, and then 2 weeks later, towards the end of April, I got my very first bleed, to where I was riding a motorcycle. So I used to ride motorcycles in a couple of bike clubs, and was riding my motorcycle home on the freeway, and I saw this little spot, and I was like, "Oh, is there something like water on my lenses or something like that?" So I went to wipe the lens and didn't come off, and I was like, "All right, something's weird." So I sped up, got home, and then I wore these yellow tinted glasses at night because they made the road look way brighter. And so I got home, and right when I took off my glasses and got in the garage, like my whole right eye, like everything was like blood red. And I was like, okay, this isn't right. So I called. They're like, come in the next day. Went in the next day. And they're like, yeah, you got to bleed. We figured it happened to the left first because we thought the left was worse, but it happened to your right. So we'll just monitor it and this and that, and come back in a couple of weeks, and we can give you another eye injection, which will hopefully stop it. And I'm like, okay. So, went back a couple of weeks later, middle of May, and it didn't work. The shots ended up fusing like the gel from the injection with the blood. And so